Last week we were building this Nscale L, and somehow in the process of building that, I got a message to contact somebody or give my contact information out, and I got involved with a gentleman who wanted me to build another L. So that's an Nscale L. We call it Mini. Today's show is brought to you by Helicon Focus. Helicon Focus is the photo stacking program that makes the most clear photographs that you could ever make. To get 20% off a lifetime of updates from Helicon Focus, just go to modelersguild.com/HF. And we thank Helicon Focus for the support of our show. And by people like you. This show is supported by patrons on patreon.com/Ron Perry. If you like what you see in the show today, please consider going over and chipping in some support. And thanks for watching. I have often noticed fairly big differences between the type of modeling that I do and the other modelers that I meet or see online on YouTube. And that is for a number of reasons. First and foremost is my vision. Second would be the fact that I'm a bit of an artist, and most of my projects are created through inspiration. I get inspired to build something, I study the subject, and start building it. I jump in with both feet, and I'm a crazy maniac to get the project done before the inspiration flees my body. And then there's the third type of modeling that I do, which is client-based, custom modeling, building kits for people, or scratch building models, or building scenic diorama bases for their models. There's a wide range of things that I can do for clients, and you know, I really don't have, well, let's just say that I lost a lot of interest in doing custom building for a long time because there really is no more money in it anymore. The fact is, there's a lot of retired people out there with, they don't have the skill to build models for, you know, to the top quality, but they can get your model to a generic quality fairly quickly. The thing is that those guys bring down the price for people like me who take it to the nth degree. In fact, most projects, the budget will fall. The budget is the thing that stops the project, and in most cases, it's the budget that keeps a project from really reaching its potential. So, having the custom modeling scene be really a race to the bottom made me feel like I needed to take a step back and try not to be a part of it. And only to really take on projects that I know that I can get to a you know, something that I'm happy with, something that I can share on YouTube. Like if I'm doing a rock bottom price on a model and I just spray it with spray paint and there's no mortar joints in it, or you know, or it's just a plain Jane model that looks like my son built it, I don't want to do it. Not because I'm like some pompous individual or something like that. Really, the truthful answer is that there are many people who love to do that thing for rock bottom prices. And I'm not going to compete for that because I'm not really interested in doing those types of models. And really, the cost of it is just the straw that broke the camel's back, because it's not about the money, it's about being inspired to build the project. Like, come on, I'm not like a model building hoe or anything like that. I'm just out here to build the models that come into my mind. I want to build the models that inspire me right away. The ones that, you know, get into my mind like a virus and take control of the mothership until the whole project is done. And when I sit down and build a model, I make a few hours out of it. I get set with all my materials. I have some nice tunes playing in the background. You know, often if you see me in these videos, I'm bobbing my head and stuff like that. I'm dancing away. I'm singing the music. I have to mute the videos out so that I can tell you what's going on. Otherwise, you'd be hearing me sing Cyndi Lauper all the time. I love Cyndi Lauper. But when it comes to building a model of a project that I'm inspired by, is much different than having a model that's being built for a client. And recently, I've had the juxtaposition of both these scenarios butt up against each other. The Brooklyn D-line build happened last week, and shortly after the build happened, I was contacted by one of the viewers, and he asked me if I was able to do Nscale L lines. I was like, sure, why not? I got bad eyes though. Actually, tell you the truth, I was at the eye doctor 2 days ago, and she said to me, the last line that I could see, she said, it's a good thing you got past that line, because if you didn't, I'd have to take away your license, Ron. And that's about the situation for my eyes right now. So when it comes to Nscale, my limitations are mounting. Is that a good word for it? They're mount. It's all going downhill from here. Let's just be honest. So maybe this whole video series that I do right here is just a archival video to say that, yeah, I did that once. And I'm taking you along for the ride. So now, when it comes to vision and model railroading, I think it's interesting to note that my vision is pretty good when I look real close to the item. And you will often see in my videos where my face is really close to the model itself. And that's my vision. Now, one of the things my eye doctor said to me, she said, you know, we can't get you glasses, Ron, to fix these things. I'm thinking that I maybe should go back to her to ask her to get me some modeling glasses. Something that is set up for me to build my models better. I think that's a possibility for me, but otherwise, I can't get a set of glasses that have a wide field of range, or range of whatever you call it, because it just doesn't work for me. So the first part of this model is that we're not going to paint it because it's so small. We want to get all the parts together while they're super flat. We want to glue them solid, have them cure, and then when they're cured, we can go back and paint them. And the reason for this is I don't want these pieces to warp on me and then have me trying to glue them together all warped up. So microply is a great product. It is not substandard in any way, but it is like all woods. Even though it is cross-grained in its design, it still curls up in ways. Sometimes there's a predominant grain, maybe more layers of wood with the grains going the same way as opposed to the other way. You know, a little bit of that will have your board curling up too, you know. So I glue my pieces together first with weld bond, of course, and allow them to dry and put them to the side. Now that the pieces are dried, I have to laminate some of these boards. Again, I'm going to weight this down and allow it to dry to try to keep as much bend out of the wood as I can, because these are long pieces and they're prone to bending because through the laser cutting, you're cutting through grains and there are portions of the model piece that have, you know, maybe a 1/4 inch or an eighth of an inch of grain there. And that's not enough to keep a flat object. So this is prone to bend up on me. So weigh it down while it's gluing. When laminating our bulkhead beams and trusses for the elevated structure, weigh them down, because they still want to bend up on you just a wee bit. And if you use a nice weight and allow your glue to cure up, you'll have a nice flat part that is not so prone to bending up. Now the color of the elevated structure is a little bit of a challenge, but as the client and I discussed, we believe that the color is the way it is because probably there's a coat of oxide primer underneath the white paint, which gives it that fleshy colored look in Chicago that you know so well. It's not really a white bridge, it's not a beige bridge, it's more of a flesh color. So to get that color, I like to first paint my wood with a solvent based paint like spray paint. I heat up the can a little bit so that it's at its most optimal pressure, shake it up real good and spray it really lightly on the parts just to get something to tooth onto the wood and to get there, to get into all the crevices. When you're brushing with an actual hand brush, it's really hard to sometimes get a solid coverage over a model with your hand. But with a spray can or an airbrush, you can almost very easily get a full coverage of the part on the first try. But that's not my final color. My final color is going to be a fleshy kind of white color. So to get that color, I used ivory white to give a off-white look, and then I used flesh. And I mix it at a ratio of about 2 to 1, 2 parts ivory white to 1 part flesh color. And then gently dry brush or wet brush, whatever you're more comfortable with, the color onto the part itself. And granted, we're working in Nscale here, so the paint really does, it can get too thick. Like if we're worrying about the thickness of paint in HO scale, then Nscale, we have to look at it, you know, it's double the trouble, really. So really make a point to take the thick puddles of paint that you've applied to the part and spread them out. Get them so that they're not really sitting there in a puddle of paint, because that's going to ruin all your details. Now let your paint dry thoroughly over 24 to 48 hours before moving on to weathering the next step. Now another thing that I've noticed with Nscale is applying the glue is, well, in HO scale I take a lot of care to make sure that the glue doesn't squeeze out to the side. And just like in dry brushing our paint onto the Nscale model, we also have to really pay attention to how much glue and exactly where we apply that glue, so that it doesn't really make a mess of the project itself. So I'm using the real small end tip of my tweezers to apply the weld bond glue exactly where we need it. Now, I could have used CA to attach these parts together. However, I like the idea of being able to pull the L apart. And with CA, you can break the joint. It's a real rigid joint, but it's kind of the thing where if you break it, it could leave some remnants, which kind of is not suitable to rejigging a model together. You know, but weld bond with a little bit of heat will let go of its strong grab and allow you to readjust items. And I have come to really appreciate that effect or technique over the years. So that's why I'm using weld bond, even though it is a bit of a challenge to get the model together, because there's all these different parts, and they're all kind of hanging in the air. You know, you could have legs that aren't 90 degrees to the ground. You can have trusses that aren't sitting in the perfectly centered spot. So it's really a bit of a challenge to get your first L set together, because you have to have 90 degrees. It's just really difficult. However, the corresponding sections that come up after the fact are easier, because you only have to put down one leg standard as opposed to doing it with two and having everything all wet glued and moving all around on you and all that jazz. It's really good to have a set of weights and weights that are 90 degrees to your base to get these things put together properly. Now everything that is made out of metal in the out of doors gets rusty. There's no way to really escape it. There's always rust on metal objects outdoors. You know, you get all this nice paint on the object, and it's supposed to protect it, but still moisture makes it underneath the paint, and rust starts making its way through. So to do our rust, I want to do it a very, very thinly. I want to do it in a wash type scenario. So I have some Winsor Newton Artisan water soluble oil paints that I mix with turpentine in a glass jar. Now these oil paints don't mix with the turpentine. The turpentine does thin out the oil paints, but they don't really mix together all that well. The turpentine really is the transit that allows your oil paints to get right into the crevices. So I'm using a bit of burnt sienna with some cadmium yellow to give myself a nice rust that is going to complement the fleshy white color of the L. Now, I'm not using a lot of paint. It's more like I'm using a lot of turpentine, whereas I dip the brush into the paint and way too much gets put onto the brush, so I dab the brush on the side of the glass jar in the turpentine to thin out the paint on the brush, because I don't want a lot of paint at all. This is Nscale, remember. So I'm dabbing the paint off the brush to get the right amount of paint on the brush, and at the very end I dip the brush in the turpentine to be able to allow the paint or the stained turpentine, I don't know how you're going to describe it, but to run using capillary action, run into the grooves of the model. And I gotta say, the technique was very, very effective. I really like the look, and you know, that's something that I can't often say about my work. So water-soluble oils and turpentine is my only form of weathering on this model. Having said that, you know, as you're building models over time, there are things you figure out. And the one thing I figured out on this model is that the turpentine really did a number on my weld bond, and the structure fell apart. So in hindsight, next time I'll go back and weather the pieces before I glue the whole structure together. You know, sometimes you have to learn things the hard way, and some of my best lessons are learned that way. So there we have it. We have a Nscale Chicago L structure video straight to your doorstep. I want to thank you for watching this video. It was a lot of fun to build this project, and actually in about a week or two we'll be building an entire oval of Chicago L for a client, and I'll probably get some of that on video too. If you liked watching these videos, please consider becoming a patron. It's a lot of work making these videos, and you know, having people who appreciate the art and appreciate the effort that you put in to share your work with others is truly one of the inspiring tools in my toolbox. You know, it's nice to be appreciated, and you know, there's really know, like, there's the best way to feel appreciated is when someone gives you a tip. And if you're one of those people who appreciate these videos, maybe it's the Meet the Modeler videos or the Follow the Builds, what have you. Or maybe it's the Modelers Guild group on Facebook or the website itself. Please consider contributing and... Please consider contributing on patreon.com/Ron Perry, and all the money that goes into that goes towards these videos and content that is made just for you. Well, this one was for a client, but you know, don't you? Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.